Hello, and welcome to Transforming Language Education, the vodcast series where we will talk about the future of teaching, inquiry, and advocacy in language education. I'm Jen Crawford.
And I'm Rob Philback. Please like or subscribe if you want to join us in helping to transform language education.
Hello and welcome to our second episode. We're here with Matthew Jellick, a graduate of the MAT TESOL program here at USC with nearly 2 decades of teaching experience and many years teaching in multiple contexts abroad as well as working here. Matthew, thank you for joining us. We want to talk a little bit more about how you use activities and experiences outside of the classroom to support meaningful learning. You talked a lot about what you do in the classroom to connect students to the language and target language and culture, as well as to honor and support their own culture and language and practices and goals and aspirations. But you started to mention some of the work that you do to extend learning beyond those 4 classroom walls. I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about how you think about or describe this approach of moving language learning beyond the classroom.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. In the international context, whether in Asia or Africa, I see my students probably in the classroom for about 2 hours a week. And a lot of times that's the only English instruction they have. And like it or not, probably the only 2 hours they use English. So I feel that it's my job as an educator to provide opportunities for students outside the classroom. And I've done this across the globe. We spoke earlier about the Women's Club in Ethiopia. In China, I did a book club. And actually, I did the book club with staff students. So I was teaching a lot of the staff on campus at the university. And just like the Women's Club was something that's overlooked in an Ethiopian educational context, book clubs in China also provide an opportunity for the staff, the adult staff, to read and discuss topics that are otherwise not prevalent in Chinese academic settings. And so what I started to do was pick books from different sociocultural authors. Our first book was, of course, Peter Hessler, as an American living in China. Our second book was by An Chi Min, who was a Chinese woman who had moved to America. So I did vice versa. We read African-American authors. We read different contexts. So again, the topics that were discussed in these books gave my students an opportunity to think about and discuss things that are not, frankly, discussed in their educational context, whether when they were students or even as adults. And I think this propels them to kind of think beyond, again, using language as something that takes them outside the classroom, outside the campus, outside of the country even, and gives them an opportunity to do so. And throughout the course, I think I did about 8 different books over the course of the 6 years in China. I started giving ownership to the students. So I started having them pick the books and them lead the discussion. And just like in a classroom, the teacher gradually kind of pulls back little by little. So by the end of my time in China, the book club was, for all intents and purposes, completely run by the staff students. I was there as a facilitator and, kind of helping them out with this. But just like inside the classroom, the gradual release of the responsibilities to the students gave them empowerment and helped kind of put different direction that even I wouldn't have done with the book club. And I thought that was very beneficial to the staff. And one of the benefits, and you guys know this from teaching teachers, is that it's a multiplying effect. And so they go back and they tell me, oh, I shared this book with my husband, or I shared this book with my friends, and kind of getting them to expand that dialogue and to a larger audience.
I would think too that there are so many sort of notions and norms and expectations around sort of what's going to happen in the classroom. I wonder, what have you seen, or do you have some examples of how this opportunity to engage in a different way, with you as an instructor outside of the classroom changes their ideas about learning and teaching, and perhaps their own, path as a language learner?
That's a great question. So I think it changes the dynamic. I think it changes that teacher-student dynamic and that relationship. Another project I did was some basically like an English corner, but more of like I kind of modeled off of a coffee club. And so we would meet and I would make coffee and, have kind of jazz music playing, just this informal thing. And the students who would come who wouldn't speak inside the classroom are all of a sudden speaking. And they're meeting other students who aren't in their classes, who aren't even taking English. And then I parlayed this and did this with the staff across the campus. And this was wonderful because it gets the cross-departmental collaboration. So you have a mathematics, TA kind of sharing ideas with somebody who's working in a completely different department. And it changes that dynamic. And so the students who were in my class who would come to these English corners or these coffee clubs, the next week when we have class, they start to develop in different ways that I don't think they would have had we only done the 16-week, 2 hours a week, standardized classes. And I think it helps to have them view me in a different light as a teacher, and especially in that context, looking at Korea or China. Kind of leveling that, the effective filter, right? This level between the teachers and the students, so they're more comfortable learning, talking, interacting in the classroom. And I see strengths that they may not share in the classroom. I see those strengths in these different settings with the English club or the book clubs or the writing center. And again, gradually giving them the responsibility. So instead of me leading it, pulling back and having them take over that.
I love the idea that you're doing this both for your own students, but then also for staff colleagues and teachers. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about this mentorship aspect of working with other teachers, whether it was in China or in Ethiopia or in Korea or here, and any examples of what that multiplying effect might have looked like or how you saw that change their approach to teaching.
Yeah, that's great. I will speak to that. Both in Ethiopia and China, a lot of the teachers I had worked with had been on teaching fellowships in the United States. So they had kind of come to the US for whether a semester or a year and shadowed an American teacher in a context here. But when they go back to their home countries, they kind of lose those teaching tools and lose those teaching concepts, whether through lack of time or just the pressure to address the different needs in their country's educational context. But to have them kind of be refreshed with these ideas and use this as a mentorship program, use this as a tool where I'm somebody they can reach out to from a totally different cultural context of teaching and bounce ideas off of, highlight back. And so when we meet again, when we're presenting, and this goes for students as well, when I meet them again, I'm not the one sharing the experiences or the ideas. I have them do it and kind of have them lead by teaching. And they use those examples because they're not oftentimes cannot do that in their own schools, their own school settings. And so to have them be able to be the presenters at the conferences or be joint writers on papers, or for students do poster presentations at conferences, to do, and I'll talk about this next about writing, have students be involved with the writing process and getting their names out there. And likewise, and I will speak to this as a teacher working with other international teachers like myself who might not have as much experience, when they come to the university or the school that I'm at, putting them in mentorship programs as well. So that means somebody who's been there, like myself, who has been in China for 6 years, and a new teacher comes to kind of show them the ropes, not necessarily, tell them how to teach or what to do, but just have them kind of learn by doing, I guess, and to help them ease into the different cultural and educational context that particular country might have. But in learning, when I was doing the MAT program, I think, we learn by teaching. And so to give as many opportunities to our students and to fellow teachers to amplify that, whether inside the classroom or at conferences or workshops or whatever it may be.
This is really fascinating, Matthew. I wonder if moving toward sort of the how-to, I'm thinking of people that are watching that are teaching, but not only sort of expat teachers like you, maybe from the US teaching international context, but so many of our listeners who are international teachers who may even, as you said, come from a different expectation in terms of where learning should occur. Maybe it's more expectations around learning happening just in the classroom. And this idea of bringing it out and beyond the classroom perhaps might be a little bit different. Just to kind of think about how you think about this, or what you would say to others, right, that are thinking about this, like, again, principles or kind of mantras that you think about, like what keeps you on track in terms of making this a regular part of your practice?
I think viewing myself as an educator who is providing opportunities for my students, knowing that English, the acquisition of English is one part of it, but language as a tool or learning as a tool, especially when I'm doing the teacher trainings or the teacher programs. And so I would, if I'm moving to a new country in a new context, I would observe first. I would observe and see kind of where the needs are and what my strength is and how I can utilize that strength and highlight that in the different contexts. I think there's always going to be teachers who show up and teach their 2-hour classes, then go home, and they're great teachers and they do a good job teaching, and that's their strength in the classroom, and that's fine. And I think that we owe it to our students, especially in international contexts, to provide them opportunities. And not all students are going to take us up on this. If I have 100 students I'm teaching that semester, 100 students are not going to join my book club, and they're not going to join my writing center. And so the students who are motivated and who want to be a part of that, and then have that branch out. So don't just limit it to my own students. But again, find your strength in whatever it may be, and use that. There was another teacher who I worked with whose strength was technology. And so she would use technology and have technology workshops and how to use different, apps and tools in the classroom, outside the classroom. That's not my strength. My strength is different things. And so I utilize my strength, she utilized her strength, and students all have different wants and needs as well. So this is where it comes, from the professional development, teachers learning from other teachers. My weakness is probably technology, and so I can learn from her. And so just because we're the teachers and we're in front of the classroom, don't lose sight of that we should always be learning as well. And I think if students see us doing that and incorporate students, involve students, invite students to other professional development workshops, and they can see themselves kind of mirrored in what I'm doing as their teacher. And it helps, again, to give them a different viewpoint of who I am as a person. And I will speak to this real quickly. The idea that we are two different entities. We are professionals and we are people. And so wherever I may be in the world teaching, I try to develop myself as a person and as a teacher. And I know in Ethiopia, I had to develop myself as a person because of the hardships and shortcomings of living in East Africa. And in China, and the opportunities I was presented in China with teaching, I developed as a professional, a lot more so in China. And so always view that also with your students. They are students, but they're also people. They're individuals. They have lives outside. And so what can we do to help propel them beyond learning where the subject verb agreement is, but using our teaching as a tool for them for life skills.
Great.
Thank you so much, Matthew. This is incredible. You've shared so many strategies and examples of how others can start to extend language learning and developing as a person and a professional beyond the classroom. It's been really enlightening and really helpful. In our follow-up episode, in episode 3, we'll turn to some of the work you briefly mentioned around writing and presenting. Thank you so much. I'm Jen.
I'm Rob. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.